This is officially the first day of the year that I'm filming with all the windows and doors open, and oh my goodness, it just feels lovely. Summer's coming and it's also wonderful. I've also got a slightly chaotic setup here today. I'm surrounded by lots of very, very spiky plants, and I'm hoping they're not going to fall on me. But I realised that I have never, I don't think ever in my time on YouTube, made a video specifically about cacti and succulents, which seems absolutely crazy because some of my favourite plants are cacti and succulents. I think a lot of the time I've just been very much prioritising my kind of tropical foliagey plants, so I thought these ones definitely deserved their own video today. But first, if you're new here, hi, my name's Claire and this is Yoli. I make videos all about houseplant care, sharing tips and tricks I've learnt over the years to help keep your plants happy and healthy. And yeah, so I thought I would take you through my top 10 current favourite cacti and succulents, tell you a little bit about them and why I love them so much. So yeah, I hope you enjoy it. Let's get into it. So before I take you through the plants, I just want to take a moment to acknowledge pride of place behind me, my 100,000 subscriber plaque, which arrived last week. And oh my goodness, it is just the coolest thing ever. I honestly cannot believe that I've got one. It feels really surreal and really weird, and I'm just really, really grateful. So thank you so much to all of you for helping me to get there. I did make an unboxing video of it, along with just kind of like a long form plant choresy video over on my Patreon. I've made that video available to everybody to watch, so you don't have to be a Patreon member, just because all of you guys helped me to get to this point. So yeah, I will link that video down below. And now the plants. I think I'm gonna start with this big old spiky one that is staring me out and precariously looks like it might fall on me, just so that I can push it back up against something. And in fact, I may need to stand up to show you this one. Yeah, I'm 100% gonna need to stand up because you're not gonna see much from there. There we go. So this is my big Euphobia, ow, big and spiky, Euphobia acrorensis, which as you can see now is taller than me. She has grown insanely big in the time that I've had her. And this is a succulent, this is not a cactus. And although it's commonly known as the cowboy cactus, it is very commonly still missold as a cactus for obvious reasons because of how it looks. But because it is a succulent, it can be incredibly fast to grow. I've had this one since it was probably about 30 centimeters high, just under my knee. And I've had it for not as long as you might think. Like for example, I can see this point here from where that little, I don't know if you can see that little mark just there. That is the growth that it gave me last summer, which as you can see is really significant. And that kind of applies to every single section of the plant. And I get a lot of questions with this one about how to get this plant to branch. And to be honest, mine didn't start branching for me until it started getting a little bit more mature. When I first got it, it was just one long kind of like stick of succulent. And yeah, as the plant matured, it did just start give me little branches here or there. And I have experimented a little bit with notching, which is where you make a little cut on the stem. It's easier to explain with plants such as philodendrons where there's like distinguishable nodes. But with this one, I just kind of tried making little cuts and seeing if that would help to encourage branching. I personally haven't found anything that works in that area. So if you have experience doing that, then please let me know down in the comments below. But yeah, I just find this one a real pleasure to grow. As I say, it's such a statement plant now in my collection. It's one that you look at and she's just bold and beautiful, and I just think she's absolutely amazing. I have, however, for many reasons, but I've removed the big, tall, spiky plants from this room now. This one and my variegated Euphorbia ingens that I will show you later in this video, they both were in this room up until last summer. And although I love the look of them in here, because they're so big and they do command so much space, you can't like brush up against them because A, you'll hurt yourself, B, you'll send them crashing over. And also I had, luckily Yoli was fine, but I had an incident at, was it the beginning of this year? I think it was, where Yoli walked through some of my plants by the window and they all came crashing down. And actually one of my other euphorbias lost one of her lovely branches. And from that point on, I was just like, I think it's probably best to separate them. So although this one absolutely loves growing in really, really bright light, ideally the brighter the better for this one, it's currently growing in a kind of medium light. The window in the bedroom next door gets some evening sun, but nothing direct, and it's not ideal for this plant. I should really invest in a grow light of some sort. But now that we're coming into the summer months, I would have thought that just for the time being, it's gonna be okay, and then I will be able to kind of rethink a little bit. But yeah, I'm currently growing it in a pot that is just a plastic nursery pot that I've decorated, and it is so not ideal because this plant is ridiculously heavy now. I need to 100% invest in something a little bit more bottom heavy to weight it down. So that is high up on my to-do list. But yeah, it's such a beautiful plant. It's one that I honestly can't rave about enough. And if you're looking for something very low maintenance and very easy, so long as you're not an overwaterer, I would highly recommend this one. And then this next one's another Euphorbia, and it's one that I actually haven't had that long, but it's a Euphorbia Morania. And I got this one around about the beginning of the year, I believe, from Grow Tropicals. And it's another one that if you didn't know and you were to just look at it, you would absolutely think it was a cactus, but in fact it is just a succulent. And from what I know about Euphorbia, like for example, the one I just showed you, I told you it grew very, very quickly for me. And so far, this one hasn't actually given me any new growth. And I know it can be a little bit hard to tell with these type of plants, like what is new growth? Maybe it's just happening really slowly. But I find that with Euphorbia, actually, you can typically see it quite a lot from the top of the plant. Like, also, sorry, I don't know why my camera is not focusing well at the moment. But like I showed you with the other one, like you could see a section that was much lighter and fuller and kind of paler. That was all new growth. And so far, I have been looking very closely at the tops and I can't see anything. So I'm really hoping as we get into the summer months, this one starts to put out a little bit more, because I mean, it's beefy and amazing as it is, but I would love to grow this plant huge. I've got this like vision for my dream house in the future, and I would love to have a big kind of succulent cactus area and like have lots of them just kind of growing wild, and for it to feel just really kind of, I was gonna say deserty, I know not all of these are desert plants, but just really, really cool. That's my vision. And I know practically in the meantime, until the dream house arrives, I can't really keep that many massive ones here because I don't have that much space. But nonetheless, when I own a plant, I can't not want to grow it huge. Like it is just impossible. I know some people have messaged me before saying, how do you stop this plant from growing so quickly? I haven't got enough space, it's pushing me out. And although I know I could keep it in lower light and all of this sort of stuff, it just feels like a waste. It feels like if I've got it, I want to be bringing out the best in it. So I've currently got this one on one of my shelves by my big south-facing windows just here, and it's getting very similar light to what my Euphorbia aquarensis that I just showed you was getting prior to me moving it into the bedroom. So in theory, it should start hopefully giving me some lovely growth. Because I don't think I've ever seen this type of Euphorbia any bigger than this. Like when this arrived, it was much larger than I thought it was going to be from looking at the pictures online. And obviously it is already branching quite significantly. So yeah, I'm just very intrigued to see how this one grows. I could absolutely take some cuttings of it. I was going to say as well, I know I just spoke about notching with plants, but if you do want to make them branch a little bit more without notching, what you can just do, obviously it will affect the upwards kind of rate of growth, but if you were to just lop like the top off one of these bits, or like the main plant. I've actually got a really good example of this that I will put a clip in of. But then around that area, it will start putting out some new growth. So that is a way that you can go about doing things. Yeah, I've got a Euphorbia that I was given at another plant swap last year, and that one didn't have a top. It had just been clean chopped at the top and the bottom. And now that it's rooted and it started to put out growth, it is kind of doing it in that pattern, and it's very exciting. That's one that didn't make it onto this list only because I thought it was quite similar to my Euphorbia aquarensis. I've got a lot that didn't make it onto this list, but yeah, the Morania one I'm very excited to grow, but as I say, currently appears to be quite slow growing, but I do have this sneaking suspicion that when it starts growing, it's not going to stop. So yeah, I will keep you updated on that one. And then this little one's a lot more common, but I think it is just beautiful. It's the Hawaria Fat Albert, which is commonly known as the desert cactus. But again, despite being known as a cactus, it is in fact a succulent. And I just love the stripiness of it. I think it's absolutely adorable, and it almost looks like it's just been kind of sculpted out of clay. It doesn't quite look like it's a real plant, if that makes sense. And this one, in my experience so far, to be honest, I'm not a Hawaria expert. I would say I've just started to get into them more in the last couple of years. I've got about 6 in my collection now. But in my experience, they are quite slow to grow compared to some other succulents. Like, I've had this one for about 4 months now, I think, and I haven't noticed any new growth on it. Maybe when I go back and look at this in, I don't know, 6 months' time, I'll be able to see that it's grown. But it doesn't feel like it's growing particularly quickly. And this is one that's getting very good light. The temperature's pretty high. So I feel like I'm doing all the right things, but it is just naturally quite a slow grower. But yeah, this is another one that I've got right in my window. As I say, it's getting lots of sunlight. I have actually literally in the last week started putting together a purely cactus and succulent shelf for my plants so that I can, I guess, just not feel bad about neglecting that area a little bit more, because at the moment what I've had is I've had lots of kind of very drought tolerant plants that don't require quite as much water in with like my alocasias and certain philodendrons, and it's just been a little bit finicky to keep on top of. And I've noticed that certain ones are just getting neglected because I'm overlooking things. So having an area that I don't have to feel bad about ignoring quite so much feels quite nice. Like, mentally it just feels quite good. But it's also quite nice that I'm able to look at all of them together and I'm really able to control their conditions, because typically most of my cacti and succulents do require pretty similar levels of care. And this one actually, I mean, I say similar levels of care, this one requires very little care at all. The only thing, again, as I've already said in this video, that you do have to watch out for is if you are an overwaterer, if you're someone that just loves caring for your plants, maybe don't go with this one, or maybe just invest in a moisture meter or something like that, because the downfall of, again, pretty much all cacti and succulents is when they are overwatered, they rot so easily and they can be a nightmare to save when that starts happening. It's kind of like if you overwater an alocasia and it starts to rot and the rot spreads to the rhizome, it can be really, really hard to come back from. So yeah, these ones I allow to pretty much completely dry out before I water again. As I've just said, they're so drought tolerant. So if you do miss a watering, if you've got to go away on holiday for a few weeks, they will be fine. They will be absolutely fine. So if you're wanting to just add little splashes of greenery around your home, but you don't want to have to actually do that much plant care, then these ones are really awesome. Really, really awesome. And as I say, there's quite a few different types of Hawaria that I could have had on this list today, because, oh my goodness, I've got another one that I'm actually looking at now that is so pretty. So, so pretty. So yeah, if you want a part 2 to this video, let me know and I can absolutely make it. But this one at the moment, I would say is high up there on my favourites list. I think it is just lovely. And one that I am absolutely obsessed with and is such a giant that she might actually struggle to fit in the camera shot is the Selenicerius chrysocardium, which is commonly known as the fern leaf cactus. And I've actually just repotted this one in the last couple of days and she's looking a little bit floppy, which can sometimes happen when you repot any plants, just as they kind of acclimate and get used to having a little bit more root space. But yeah, typically she's a little bit fuller looking than she is right now. But I had wanted a fern leaf cactus for such a long time. They are, I would say nowadays, this year, becoming a little bit more accessible here in the UK. But for a while, they were really, really difficult to get hold of. And I had a fishbone cactus, which is quite structurally quite similar to the fern leaf. And I saw the fern leaf for the first time and I remember my mind was just absolutely blown and I was like, I have to have that plant. And I got a cutting of the fern leaf cactus about a year ago, and the cutting, now that I've repotted, I actually can't tell which bit it is. But the original cutting is potted up with the main mother plant here. But I saw this big one in a local garden centre at the beginning of the year, and it was a price that I was really happy with. And I was like, I know I've already got a cutting, but I just feel like that's a plant I want to buy big. Like, it's not the fastest one in the world to grow, and I wanted it so much, I bit the bullet and I just decided to get myself one. So yeah, I have absolutely no regret in it. I think it is just stunning. It's a plant that makes me so unbelievably happy. And again, is just very, very, very low maintenance. It's one that I don't even really monitor that much, to be honest. Every few weeks to a month, I'll be like, it should probably have some water. But it does like to pretty much completely dry out, and I've got it right in my window. So long as this one's getting good light, and again, you're sure that you're not overwatering it. Again, I know I sound like a broken record with that, but it is so important to make sure you're not overwatering. Then really, this is a very, very easy plant to care for. So yeah, I am, oh my God, since repotting her, she was in a very, very, very small pot before. I've gone up about 3 pot sizes, and my God, is she heavy. Like, she's a very beefy plant as it is, but I've used a very gritty, sandy mix to make sure that she's got good drainage. So my goodness, it's like holding a bag of rocks. But she's just beautiful. So yeah, if you're looking for something very unusual, very unique, very kind of statement-y, statement plants, then 100% I could not recommend this one highly enough. It's one that honestly, I kind of wish I'd bitten the bullet and got myself sooner. I'd wanted it for such a long time, and the amount of joy it has brought me in the time that I've owned it just makes me think I wish I'd done it sooner. So yeah, one that I would highly, 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 highly recommend. And then with this next one, if you were to just see it and not know it was a succulent, I personally don't think you would necessarily think it was a succulent. It is an, I'm going to try and get the name right now, an Adenum obeseum, I think. Oh God, I'm trying to learn the name to it and I just cannot remember it. It's commonly known as the desert rose, and that is what I typically call it. And I got this one at the beginning of the year. This was very kindly sent to me by one of you guys, and it's a plant that I had never had before. I didn't know anything about, and I was just told that it likes to be grown in a very similar way to Euphobia. And obviously I've got a lot of Euphorbias in my collection, and I was like, okay, cool. I potted it up in a very, very sandy mix. Oh, and in fact, look at those roots. Wow. Yeah, a very sandy, gritty mix. I've been giving it lots of light. I haven't been letting it, when I say I haven't been letting it dry out, I have been letting it dry out between waterings, but I haven't been letting it go dry for as long as some of my other succulents, for example. I often find that Euphorbias quite like more, when I say more frequent, I'm so scared of saying more frequent watering because, as I say, they are so easy to overwater. But compared to, okay, let's go back to the Hawaria. For example, the Hawaria, when this one gets to be bone dry, I will feel its pot and I'll be like, okay. And even then, I might wait a week or two to water it. Whereas with my Euphorbias and ones like this that behaves very similarly to a Euphorbia, if I feel that it's started to get dry, then I will probably water it as soon as I notice it. That is just what I found has worked really well. And so far with this one, it has worked well as well. And these little leaves that it gives you are just so gorgeous. They're almost, I don't know, there's almost something a little bit ficusy about them. And obviously, like, if you were to just see that without the main kind of chunky succulent stem, it's almost got umbrella tree vibes as well. But it is capable of producing the most beautiful flowers. And I know I'm not always a massive fan of flowers on indoor plants, but these ones really do look stunning. If I can find a picture, I will put it on the screen so that you can see. So my goal is to get this one to flower by the end of the summer. Is that an unrealistic goal? I don't know. But yeah, I'm just really enjoying growing it so far. And as I say, like, I just think it's so fun sometimes when you acquire a plant that you're not familiar with, one that you've never seen or heard of before, and you just have to kind of, I don't know, like, for me, plant care is just like a bit of a, I want to say like a bit of a game. Like, I like figuring things out and I like watching things grow and I like feeling like I'm achieving something. And yeah, this one's just making me feel pretty good about myself at the moment. I feel like I'm getting it right so far. So yeah, I'm just finding it really enjoyable and I cannot wait to see what it does for me next. So yeah, it's early days, but it's a really cool one, a really cool plant. And another one that I'm having to stand up to show you is my Variegated Euphorbia ingens, and this is such a beautiful, beautiful Euphorbia. Not quite as tall as the Euphorbia acrorensis that I showed you at first, but getting there. I would say this one is probably going to outgrow me by the end of growing season this year. When it does grow, it is very, very quick to grow again. And actually, just looking at it in this light, I don't know how well the camera's going to pick this up, but if you look at the top, can you see that little section there? Oh, ow, from where my finger is, just there about, that's kind of limey green. And that is actually all of the growth that it gave me in the last growing season, in the last kind of period of lots of light. So again, as I say, it is quite quick to grow, but because it is a variegated plant, it does require slightly higher light than some of the other succulents I've shown you. All of them are high light plants, but this one requires even more because it doesn't contain as much chlorophyll needed in order to photosynthesize. So for that reason, some of the others you can kind of get away with from time to time growing in slightly lower levels of light, whereas this one will kick up a stink pretty quickly. And I've got this one right up pushed against the bedroom window. This is actually the one that Yoli brought down. It did have another little branch there that very sadly snapped off. But yeah, I've got this one growing through in the bedroom right up against the window at the moment, and it's surviving. It's surviving. It isn't currently giving me any new growth. I'm trying to think of a way, potentially even of growing it outside on the balcony this summer. I'm not entirely sure. I'm thinking through things at the moment because I want to be bringing out the best in this plant. I really want to grow this one huge. I've no idea how I'm ever gonna move it from the flat, but I just want to grow it huge because I think it's beautiful. And the thing that I really love about it as well is that it's got kind of splashy patches of variegation, which I think are really unusual. You don't see that on all of them. And I know some people don't like that, but I just think it helps to make the plant really unique. And as I said earlier, this is another one that is commonly mistaken for a cactus, and it is in fact a succulent, and that's another one of the reasons why it's very fast to grow. I got this one from House of Kojo, I think about maybe 3 years ago now, and I'll put a clip in if I can find it, but I remember taking it out of the packaging and I think it was about that big at the time. So again, it's given me pretty amazing growth in the time that I've had it, and it's been really, really easy to look after. Similarly to what I said there about the Euphorbia acrorensis, I have also got this one growing in a nursery pot that I've decorated, which does not give any weight to this plant at all, hence why I'm constantly holding it because I don't want it to fall over. So yeah, a heavier pot is 100% on the to-do list. And I've just counted the plants that I've brought over to show you, and I've realised that I've brought over one extra by mistake. This was going to be a top 10 video, but it's actually a top 11. Let's call this one the bonus plant. But this is a Gymnocalycium variegata, and again, I got this one in my Grow Tropicals order at the beginning of the year. And I've said it before, but typically I'm not usually like the biggest fan of lots of colour within houseplants, and I've got nothing against it in other people's collections. I think it can look really gorgeous, but I think for someone like me who firstly is very easily overstimulated by visual stuff and lots of colours, I know I am, but also when you've got a very big collection, sometimes if you've got lots of colour in amongst that as well, for me it can just be a bit overwhelming. But I saw this one on the Grow Tropicals website and I was like, ooh, I really, really like that. And it's just been one that, honestly, I have just treasured in the time that I've owned. And as I say, I only got it at the beginning of the year. And already, and this is a cactus as well, by the way, I should have said that. Already it has grown fairly significantly for me. And I said this the other day, but the variegated side is actually seemingly growing much quicker than the non-variegated side at the moment. And that's quite unusual because typically variegated growth, because it doesn't contain any chlorophyll and therefore can't photosynthesize in the same way as the green sections of growth, a lot of the time those bits can be slower to grow. So I'm kind of baffled as to why it is growing quicker. But it is also getting ready to flower for me. I've got 2 little buds just there. And the fact that it's going to flower and I haven't even had it 6 months yet is making me very, very, very excited. I know I might sound like I'm contradicting myself saying that I'm not a massive fan of colour and like lots of flowers and houseplants, but when one starts doing something like this, it is just very exciting. And again, just kind of makes you feel like you're getting things right, because not that there's actually a huge amount to get right with this plant. All I've done, again, very similarly to the rest, I'm just growing it in as bright a light as I can possibly provide. I've got it right up against my south-facing window. And from what I can see, this one's actually potted in a combination of perlite and fluval stratum. And I didn't pot it in that myself. This is what it came potted in. Don't know if you can see, if you just look round, like at the bottom there, the black stuff. That's the fluval stratum. And to be honest, lots of you have told me that I should experiment more with that. And I've only tried it a couple of times when I was living back at my mum's house, because my mum had a fish tank and she used it for the fish. I tried it a little bit then for propagation, and I liked it. I thought it was fine, but I personally haven't found it to be any better than semi-hydro or like pure, like perlite or something like that. That's just me personally, but I don't know, do you guys use it a lot? Maybe I should give it another go. I do hear really good things about it, and it's definitely keeping this one very happy. But yeah, I just think the colours and the kind of the textures and the patterns within it are absolutely amazing. It's just like a little gemstone potted in a pot, and it's one that is just exciting me so much. And I think as well, because cacti can be very slow to grow, the fact that I haven't had this one that long and it's already starting to do exciting things for me is just making me feel like I want to get even more of them. There was another one actually at the last plant swap that I went to, and I so nearly picked it up. I'm trying not to add too many duplicates to my collection at the moment while I'm trying to kind of conserve and downsize a little bit, but this is one, honestly, that I do feel like I could just get more and more and more of. So again, at some point when I've got more space, who knows, maybe this one will be huge by then, but when I've got a little bit more space, I think I will be getting more. And I actually have no idea. I have no idea about the flowers of this plant. I don't know if potentially I'm going to get some seeds. I don't know if I could pollinate. Do any of you know anything about this? Because if you do, I would be very interested to hear more. So please let me know in the comments below. But yeah, it's one that I just adore. And if you are thinking of getting something a little bit weird and wacky that's very easy to care for, then I would recommend this one. Honestly, so highly, so highly. I haven't had it long, but it's one that is just making me incredibly happy. And then this little one, so this is commonly known as Burrows Tail, but its Latin name is actually Sedum morganianum.
That sounds like a Harry Potter spell, isn't it?
Sedum morganianum. And I spoke about this one when I did my houseplant tour recently, because I'm a little bit baffled. Firstly, I love this little section so much. I think it's adorable. I would really love to get a big full plant of this going. And when I first got this one, I think about maybe 8 months ago now, it was significantly smaller, and it has given me a lot of growth in the time that I've had it. But I decided that I didn't want to wait. And so I did go ahead and I ordered myself a little plant, and I was like, I will pot them all up together. I'll get a lovely full plant going. And the one that I ordered, I'll show you it. It's just growing very differently to this. Like if you look at the fullness within this, like it's very uniform, its growth is all very kind of, I don't know, plump. And this one always just looks a little bit unwell. Like although towards the tops it looks very similar, if you look down here, like it's all just very kind of crinkly and definitely not plump. And I honestly don't know what the difference is. They are growing in literally identical conditions. I grow them next to each other, and they just look different. And some of you have said that maybe it's just a slightly different genus, and maybe it is, but when I first got this, it was looking much more similar to this one. So I'm really intrigued to find out, firstly, maybe if I'm doing something wrong here, but I don't understand why this one would be behaving in such a positive way and this one would not be. As I say, as it's kind of growing and maturing, like towards the top here, that's starting to look a little bit better. So I think maybe it's just been a really long acclimation process. I don't know. I mean, typically with cacti and succulents in my space, I haven't found any of them to have particularly dramatic acclimation periods. And I think that's just because typically they are slightly hardier plants. But yeah, if any of you have any theories on this, do let me know, because I really want to get to the bottom of it. Oh dear, the doorbell's just rung and my legs are completely dead. So this is going to be interesting. Oh no. Oh my God, my legs are so pins and needly. You know, like when you've been sat on your knees for a really long time and then you stand up and like all of the blood just rushes back to your feet and then you can't move. I almost stacked it going down the stairs then. But yeah, I think that's all I was going to say about this one. It's one that I absolutely adore. I think it's so adorable. It's so cute. And I just want to have it as a big, lovely full plant. I'm just not quite sure. Yeah, I'm not quite sure how to get there based on what I'm working with yet, but I'm figuring it out. And we are coming into growing season now. So hopefully I'll be able to come back with some better advice in the next few months once I have figured things out a little bit more. But yeah, it's gorgeous. And another type of plant that has been a firm favourite of mine for a really long time is the Fishbone Cactus. And I think this one is just absolutely stunning. And I got this little plant quite recently at the Bristol plant swap from Amy, who's Perky Plants on YouTube. And I felt absolutely awful. I did a little haul of all of the plants I brought back from there, and I completely forgot to include this one. So thank you so much, Amy. Honestly, I'm over the moon with it. I think it's gorgeous. And this was actually very good timing when I stumbled across Amy's one at the plant swap, because my fishbone cactus that was doing so well up until I moved here has been on a little bit of a journey, and the majority of that plant was actually brought down by thrips about this time last year. And I've got lots and lots of cuttings of that plant. I've got little sections of it propagating here, there and everywhere around my flat. And in fact, is it this bit? Is it this bit? One section, and I think it's this little section here, was one that I potted up with Amy's plants a couple of weeks ago. And I think that's probably what I'm going to do now. I think I'm just going to continue to pot the rooted sections that I've got back up with this one and try and get it lovely and full again, because, oh my goodness, my one before was doing amazingly, and she even got to the point of flowering for me a couple of times, which was just beautiful. They produced the most gorgeous, dramatic, like just such unusual blooms, and I felt really privileged that I'd been able to get mine to do that. But as I say, you don't typically think of, I mean, like the classic pest that you think of when you hear cactus and succulents is mealybugs. And when I found thrips, this was, I think, probably the first cactus that I had dealt with thrips on. But yeah, I didn't notice it for ages, and I just suddenly noticed that the plant wasn't looking very well, and I lifted up a couple of its leaves and I was like, oh my God, it was riddled with them. So yeah, I had to chop it right back and, as I say, take some cuttings, and for that reason, this is the fullest section of plant I currently have. But it is actually, so long as you monitor it for pests, it is a very easy one to grow. It has very similar requirements to the fern leaf cactus that I showed you earlier in this video. And as I say, structurally, it is very, very similar. The one thing that I have found, if you do want to attempt to make this plant flower, is that it does require very high light, and not just the intensity of the light that it receives, it also needs very long hours of light. And when mine flowered, when I was living back at my mum's house, it was growing in my mum's conservatory, which got bright light all day round. And when I saw it starting to bud, I was putting it under grow lights as well, so it had an insane amount of light. And typically they do have to be quite mature in order to produce flowers as well. Like, I would be fairly surprised if one at this kind of, I was going to say entry level, but one at this level of maturity was to bloom. I'm not saying it's impossible, but I've just never experienced it. So yeah, it's one that I'm really excited to have back in my collection, because now I've got a full plant that actually feels like I own it again, because having lots of cuttings doesn't really make you feel like you've got the plant sometimes. So yeah, I'm going to be very, very vigilant on my pest checking, but I'm really excited to see what this one does for me. And hopefully I'll be able to grow it to the lovely stage I got it to the last time, but I will keep you updated. And then I know I've spoken about this one a lot, but I wanted to include it because it is just such a special one to me. It is the Aloe Tikitari. And this is one that every single time I've shown it on my channel over the years, people have said, oh my goodness, that's not an aloe vera. You don't know what you're talking about. That's a Hawaria. And like, I can understand why you would think that, because putting it next to the Hawaria, they do look very, very similar. But as I say, it is in fact, and I have triple checked this because each time I'm like, oh God, am I wrong? But it is an Aloe Tikitari, which is a very unusual and very cool type of aloe vera. And this is one of the first types of aloe vera that I actually propagated. And I was stocking these plants in my little shop that I set up over lockdown. And I noticed there was a teeny tiny pup coming up in the soil. And I was like, you know what? I was like, I'm going to divide that. I'm going to propagate it. I'm going to keep it for myself. And that is what I did. And that plant grew to be huge. That then gave me several babies. And this is a pup from that. So this is essentially a third generation baby from my original one back in 2020, and it's just gorgeous. I just think it's so pretty. Similarly to what I said about the Hawaria, I just love the stripiness on its leaves. I think it is just so striking and so pretty. And this one actually is very good at letting you know when it needs a drink. And right now I can tell that this one is quite thirsty, not just because it is feeling a little bit flat and deflated, but all of its leaves kind of fold up like that when it's dehydrated, and when it's nice and plump and hydrated, it almost kind of opens up and looks a little bit more, I was gonna say almost like a lotus flower. Like it just looks open and hydrated. And so yeah, I will be watering it after this video. But yeah, it's another one that I really don't have to do that much to. I find it really rewarding, but that could also partly be because it's one of the first ones that one of the first succulents I propagated. I don't know. It's just one that I feel very attached to, and it's one that I feel very proud of. So yeah. It's one that I just never have to worry about. It never gives me any grief, and it just remains looking really, really beautiful. And then finally, another one that I haven't had that long, but it was a wish list plant, and I'm so excited to finally have it, is the Euphobia Lacta White Ghost. And this one right now might look very similar. In fact, it does look very similar to the Variegated Euphorbia ingens, the big one that I showed you earlier in this video. But when this one gets going, it's almost, again, I will have to put some pictures on the screen to explain what I mean, but it's almost quite skeletal. Like it's almost got more of a form similar to the Morantania than it does the Variegated Euphorbia ingens, and it's just very unusual and it's very cool. And to me, it almost looks like something that you might see in like a fairy tale or something. It doesn't quite look real. So yeah, I'm so excited, so unbelievably excited to be growing this plant. And again, I just love how it's got such a cool balance of variegation. I love that it's not all white. And again, like I said earlier, I know some people really want it to be all white. I know they get very upset if it does start giving them green growth, but I just think the balance is so much more interesting. And it often means that your plant is going to be faster to grow as well, because obviously it does contain a higher balance of chlorophyll. And this is one that, in the grand scheme of things, has actually kicked into action pretty quickly for me, I would say. It hasn't given me a huge amount of growth so far, but I got it in January as a rooted cutting. And literally in the last month, it's just started to give me this little bit of growth here. And you can kind of see from where it went in, that's where it had stopped. And this is all around about a month's worth of growth, I would say. And like I said, now that we're coming into the growing season, I hope this one continues to grow for me, but I really hope it starts to branch, because that's when it looks really cool. There's no sign of it yet, but I'm really hoping that that is what's going to happen next. But yeah, again, like I said earlier, because it's a variegated plant, it does need very high levels of light in order to grow. So it's another one that I've got right up in my windows. I've got all my shelves in my windows now, so I'm kind of optimizing the light. Oh, wow. Also, it's just started to chuck it down with rain. What is going on with this weather? But yeah, I've got it right in my windows. It seems very happy. I did also get another section of it that was unrooted, and very sadly, I tried to propagate it, but it just rotted away to nothing. I chopped it about 3 times, left it to callus, but it got to the point where it was only about that big, and I was like, there's nothing more I can do. So I had to let that section go. But I'm very glad that this one remains and is looking so beautiful. So yeah, I'm really excited for it. I'm really excited for all of these ones. And I think because typically they're not quite as quick to grow, the growth that they do give you is therefore a lot more rewarding. So yeah, as I say, coming into the spring and summer months, it's just like, it's really exciting because that's typically when they start to do fun things. But yeah, let me know down in the comments below what some of your favourite cacti and succulents are, because I would say I'm definitely getting more into them. I think over the last couple of years, I've probably acquired more than I have done in my whole time of owning plants. So yeah, if there's any that you think I'd like, or if there's any that you would recommend, then let me know down below. And yeah, I really hope you enjoyed this video, and if you did, please make sure to give it a thumbs up, subscribe to my channel, have a lovely day, and I will see you in the next video.
Stay sexy, plant lovers.